So thank you, and I want to talk to you about demand response, the demand response business model. And there was a saying, if Henry Ford would have asked 100 years ago what type of vehicles his consumers want, they probably would have said, we want to have a horse which is faster and eating less. We would never have gotten an automobile. And this is the type of paradigm shift I'm talking about if I talk about demand response. Because what is driving this energy turnaround? And what is driving this paradigm shift we are now embarking? First of all, yes, renewable energies. And these renewable energies needs, well, first of all, it's bi-directional flows of energy, but it also needs two-way communication. We're talking about intelligent devices, appliances and networks. So the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication. And that builds more or less the smart grid, which is an ecosystem at the nexus of energy providers, power, mobile, and ICT. So the topic of our conference today. Yes, there are prosumers, not only consumers, but also consumers who provide energy. And they want to have simplicity, not take daily action and endure discomfort. And the paradigm shift I was talking about is, for 100 years, generation followed supply. And now for a generation followed demand. And now, for the first time, demand also needs to adapt to generation. Because, well, we want to all see a lot of renewables. In Germany, it's 80% till 2050. I think it's 35% till 2020. But there is a dirty secret. Renewable generation is very intermittent. It's very fluctuating. So you might have load curves within seconds going up and down 8, 9, 10 gigawatts. So you need peaking power systems, mainly run on mostly coal or other CO2-intense fuels. So in order to enable this energy turnaround, yes, you need flexible conventional generation. So the typical peakers, the power peakers. We need storage, and everybody's talking about this plug-in vehicle fleet, which we might see someday. So we're talking about hundreds, thousands, millions of e-cars. And of course it needs grid extension, but there is also two additional topics, which is energy efficiency and demand response, which you can implement much faster because the technology is there. Bernard from EDF talked about the PLCs. Every consumer, and we're talking about industrial and commercial consumer, has a PLC today, and I can connect to. So let me give you a little bit of definition of demand response. This is the process to manage consumer consumption, which is the demand of electricity, in response to supply conditions. Very easy, very simple. And demand response is, at least from my perspective, the only capacity resource with a positive environmental impact. And it looks like to a supplier, to a utility, like a gas peaker. Jessica, by the way, who forgot to introduce herself, she's the executive director of SEDC. She talked already a little bit about this picture. It looked similar, but what you see here is a typical business case of a demand response aggregator. What you see on the left-hand side are the industrial, commercial, institutional energy consumers, and for sure also residential. And then there's the aggregation part. And there's the NOC, the Network Operations Center. So that's the intelligence, which is building out of single loads, a load curve, which you then eventually can trade. Either trade to a utility, to a DSO, to over OTC, or into an energy exchange. When we started off 2 years ago, we traded it off to the TSO. And this is the main job of an aggregator. He goes out, he interconnects with all the different industrial, commercial sites, and you have single loads, and you might also have distributed generation, and you aggregate it. It's like a virtual peaker, you can say. And again, what I mentioned before, such a virtual peaker looks like a gas peaking plant to a utility or grid operator. So talk a little bit about the challenges to implement, use all this potential which is there, which is a flexibility potential. First of all, demand response should be treated in a non-discriminatory manner. Incentives as of today, are mostly put in place for participants, so for generation, so for wind and solar, for biomass. But you also need incentives to pay for the businesses who provide all this flexibility potential. They won't give it for free, and this potential is much cheaper to acquire and to aggregate than to build a peaking gas power plant. For aggregators, most critical is hence to provide sufficient monetary incentives to the energy consumers so they participate in these demand response programs, which, by the way, can be set up by independent demand response aggregators, but also by utilities, even TSOs, or maybe in the future ISOs. And another thing is, and it sounds almost too simple to state it here, but the wholesale markets and all the structures are designed for generation capacities. For sure, they were not designed for demand response capabilities and capacities. So something has to change. And of course, yes, it goes back to standardization. Thank you very much.